Steve, take it away. Okay.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Today we're going to taste some fall wines. I'm sort of in an open air market. If you ever get to the region of Burgundy, absolutely make sure you're there for the farmers market that happens on Saturday and I think Wednesday as well. It's spectacular, but this is in the middle of this downtown Beaune, kind of in the heart of Burgundy. So today we're going to taste wines for fall. And I thought of these wines only, well, for a number of reasons. I think that style-wise, these are great wines to have as we transition from the hot summer to the cold winter. These are sort of tweener wines. They also have a lot of characteristics that inherently remind us of the fall. In fact, this first white that we'll have often has some fairly fall kind of profile to it. Well, actually the red as well. So I will say both of these have fall profile that we'll talk about. But what makes a fall wine? Well, generally it's one that is maybe a little heavier than something that you would have in the summertime, but a little lighter than something you would have in the winter. And they should go with food that we're eating right now. So again, our foods typically get a little fuller bodied, a little heavier, a little fattier, a little richer as the weather gets cooler, and these accommodate that. So I don't know exactly why. I really do associate fall with like Burgundy in France or Willamette Valley, Pinot Noir in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. I think of these varietals as being fall-like. So I think without further ado, let's jump into the first wine. So the first wine is considered a Bourgogne Blanc. So it's a fairly broad region for fruit sourcing. It's basically throughout Burgundy, but it is always Chardonnay. It's always 100% Chardonnay. They do not blend other varietals into it, and it is a wine. So typically Burgundy is very localized, not just single villages, and even single vineyards, but even single parts of single vineyards in single villages. So it's very kind of Russian nesting doll in its style. So a Bourgogne Blanc is not that. It is a wine produced from multiple vineyard sites. And again, there can be wide differences between them, but multiple vineyard sites and not one specific area. So 2020, this is a 2020 vintage. 2020 was a very good vintage, not for the people, but for the grapes. And it developed wines that, particularly whites, that had kind of a lot of intensity and some nice acid to back it up. So they were very well composed. Might even consider this to be kind of a classic style of Burgundy. And Burgundy is a weird thing. I mean, it has great advantage where it can produce some of the greatest Chardonnay and Pinot Noir on the planet, and also some really not so great. It is very much reflective of the climate and the season, the growing season. So 2020 actually proved to be very, very good. There was some initial issues during flowering, but the vintage ended well. It wasn't huge, but the quality was very good. So this first wine is again 100% Chardonnay, and you can I poured it in my glass maybe 5-10 minutes ago. There's still a little, you can I'm seeing a little bit of a dissolved CO2 So a little spritziness, indicating it's a young wine, and 2020 we know that it is. On the nose, I mean, like that's Burgundy. It smells like kind of like baked apples, some white flowers, pear, again, minus the white flowers, apples and pears, very fall tree fruits. It does see, so these in this region of Burgundy, they do absolutely use oak. They don't use it in the way that California does. They typically they want a more subtle note to it. They will always, of course, use French oak, so there is no American oak being used here, but they'll use barrels that have maybe been used for previous vintages, second or third fill barrels, but they want kind of a picture frame around their wine instead of a big punchy in the face oak note. So on the nose, yeah, lots of tree fruits, some nice flowers, and then in that kind of lingering barrel spice. And I don't know, it to me, the nose smells fall like. On the palate, I mean, kind of reaffirms the aromas, apple, pear, maybe some stone fruits like peach or nectarine, but not very ripe peach or nectarine, but great acidity. I mean, mouth is still watering, has kind of the power of again, very classic of the vintage, big flavors, bright acidity, very nice. So I don't know. Food wise, so this style of wine is really well suited for food. It's fairly versatile. I mean, if you had even a light salad, it would be great. Lighter proteins, chicken, fish. This part of France is fairly close. I mean, in this market, actually, if you look, let me see if I can do it. No, there we go. There, if you look on, it's hard to do this in a mirror, right along that building, there's actually, that's where all of the seafood is sold. And so you'll have, a good 100 yards of, the only way I can describe them is identifiable ocean creatures and unidentifiable ocean creatures. Lots of things that, I mean, the oysters and the clams and the mussels, but then a whole bunch of other stuff. So definitely things out of the water do very well with this wine. They're sort of a chore to make, but there is a very famous, I guess it would be technically a pastry made in this area called gougère. And it's a flour and butter, they call it choux. It's piped actually with a pastry sleeve, and you incorporate a lot of local cheese. Probably the closest cheese that we would have would be Gruyere. You incorporate that into the pastry. You bake them out. The steam actually causes these things to swell out, and they turn into these things you just pop. I mean, it's like almost like a donut hole, except there's nothing inside. It's more like a cruller donut hole that's savory. And those with that wine are absolutely spectacular. The cheese just pairs beautifully with it. So it's the Chardonnay from Burgundy, very food friendly. So I guess with that, thoughts on this one?
Sounds good. I want to try the pastry too.
Mm.
Sounds amazing.
You kind of want to make, when you do it, you kind of have to commit to it. It's you want to bake them in large batches, but they do freeze very well. And if you go into one of the cafes in this part of in Burgundy, you can often find these as appetizers, little gougères. I mean, sometimes they even give them to you for free, just as a kind of a snack. But yeah, they're truly wonderful.
And they are not that hard to make. I have made gougères.
Yeah.
They're not really, they're very few ingredients and they're pretty easy.
Yeah.
And they are delicious.
Yeah.
And they're
No, I guess my biggest problem is after making them, I find out, I mean, it takes a while to pipe out all of the things and bake them out. But when you are done, I usually find myself disappointed because I'll eat like a sheet tray of them. And it's really not served the purpose if I'm trying to make them for someone else.
Why is that a problem?
Yeah, no, I've just learned to triple and quadruple the recipe.
There you
So
go.
there's enough to get me by and then enough to share.
Well, Jack, you now have a homework assignment.
Yeah, there you go.
There is,
can't wait.
I'm trying to remember there's a recipe that I've used that I found online. It might be Daniel Balud's. Somebody out there has got a great recipe. It's it bakes out very consistently.
I have a recipe in a appetizer book. I'm not sure if it's a chef's, but I'm glad to pass it on to Kathleen.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Because it was pretty simple and they were really tasty.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's flour, butter, usually like Gruyere or Comté cheese, a little nutmeg, I think a little white pepper, and that's about it. It's they're delicious.
That sounds great.
So like I said, this wine, the aromas often, I mean, the nose they're very fall-y kind of wines. Whites from this region. I mean, they even the wood barrel just kind of gives you this kind of warmth of maybe not a fire yet in the fireplace, but you can smell the fireplace just in the background. It's that it's coming.
Any thoughts or observations on this one for those of you who have the white?
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm more used to, I guess, California Chardonnay. I just moved here last year from California.
Mhm.
So I'm used to, for an oak barrel, more buttery.
Mhm.
I like to call it buttery flavored Chardonnay.
Sure.
It's good, but the pastry, I don't bake. Is there any place in town I can buy one?
Swing by Jack Altman's house. No.
The only problem with them is they really, I mean, you can freeze them, and once you bake them out, you want to freeze them on a sheet tray and then put them in a Ziploc bag so they don't stick together. But the problem with them is, and certainly in Burgundy, they would make them daily.
Yeah.
They really are kind of an a la minute kind of thing. You want when they deflate, they get less crusty, and right out of the oven is perfect. But no, it is, unfortunately, if you do find them, they've probably been baked out within 5-6 hours of your enjoying them.
I really like this wine, both by itself and with food. It's really great. And unlike the California Chardonnays, which my wife particularly likes, the old style, which is the buttery ones, not some of the steel ones. But this one has such great acidity that it goes so well with food that it's just delicious. And I did some little tartlets, and all of them have a different cheese. I reserved my Gruyere for something else I'm doing tomorrow, but I used a smoked Gouda in one and a sharp cheddar in another and a Munster in another one, and nuts in all of them. I put, whether it's walnuts or almonds or something, and it just goes so well with the wine that I can't imagine like any chicken, turkey, fish, cheese, salads, grilled vegetable that wouldn't go well with this wine. It's just this is one of the best Chardonnay wines I've ever had, to be honest. Not that I've had like Steve, I'm not that, but I mean, of all the California ones I have, I actually like this French one better.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, as we're talking about Chardonnay, I mean, California did not always make oaky buttery Chardonnay. That really was something that came about in the late 80s, early 90s. It was almost if some is good, more is better. And I guess my only, I mean, I there are certain, I mean, I love California Chardonnay, but I don't love all California Chardonnay. I think I guess I'm more maybe a traditionalist. I think that Chardonnay should be like any wine should be the wine first. The oak should not be a major component. It should, you know, if you kind of dissect the flavor profile, maybe 20%, but it should not overpower the wine. And I think sometimes the heavy toast barrels. The other thing is it's more of a style. It grew out of primarily California and Argentina, California and Australia. Most pursued this style where if you allow there's a natural bacteria that can convert the green apple acid in Chardonnay into milk acid, into lactic acid. And this wine has gone through some of that. I'm guessing because of the acidity, it didn't go through what they call 100% mallow. But certain the problem that I've had with some California Chardonnays is that the mallow is so overwhelming. There is no acid, and the acid gets acidity is largely what makes wine food friendly. That's the feature. I mean, it's for the same reason that, you know, you order a big fatty fish and chips and you squeeze a little lemon juice on it. That lemon is there to serve as a counterpoint to the richness, the fattiness of that fried food. And so in certain treatments of Chardonnay, you can risk losing that acidity, and you want your tongue salivating when you have food. And if it's milk acid, if it's lactic acid, that doesn't always prompt the salivation. So I mean, there's certain Chardonnays which I absolutely love, but I love them with very certain things. I mean, lobster and drawn butter and a big, rich, buttery California Chardonnay is delicious. They complement each other. They share the same richness. They share a lot of similarities. But for lighter foods, for foods that have less fat, cholesterol, dairy, just a little bit more acid allows that wine to kind of serve as a refresher on the palate, kind of, you know, bring out more flavor. But I feel bad because it sounds like I'm poo-pooing California, and I adore California Chardonnay. But there are certain styles where I would say, true to form, they don't reflect Chardonnay the way it is. Like I said, the Burgundians are very, I mean, this is where Chardonnay was born, and they're very concerned with honoring kind of the grape, and honoring what it can do left alone, essentially. What does it look like naked? But I mean, certainly this wine has definitely seen oak. You can smell it, you can taste it. So it absolutely has an oak component, but I would say it's probably maybe 20% of the complete flavor profile, aroma profile of the wine. It's not more, it's not less. It's just kind of almost like a little picture frame around the picture.
Like Steve and Jack, I was curious in how this Chardonnay would compare with the Californians, and I haven't had a lot of experience drinking various types of Chardonnays, but it gives rise to an interesting spectrum in terms of what the vineyards around the world can do with the Chardonnay grape. So it makes for a great contrast with the California Chardonnays that I'm more familiar with. And I like the clean taste, but I don't think I would drink one in without the other. I think there would be, like you said, occasions where I can imagine drinking either one, but I think it's great to have an alternative to just drinking the California Chardonnays.
Well, that's a very kind of apt understanding of Chardonnay. Chardonnay I always describe Chardonnay sort of like modeling clay. It will be a lot of things, and the winemaker can adjust those things. They can, I mean, simply by picking. I mean, for example, if this wine were harvested later in the season, where it was, my guess is in tasting the flavor profile, my guess is this was picked where the vast majority of the grapes were at perfect ripeness. Probably there were some that weren't, that were underripe, and those provide acidity. Those provide kind of the backbone for the wine. But if this wine were allowed to ripen more fully, you know, the wine suddenly, I mean, it'll turn into, instead of apple and pear, you will get flavors of pineapple and mandarin orange and creme brulee. I mean, it's, I'm sorry, lemon curd. So richer, not fresh, kind of either fully ripe or almost even overripe. I mean, it's Chardonnay is an amazing chemical stew, which is why it can take on so many different forms. I mean, I could probably pour 12 different wines, all Chardonnay, and they would all taste different. I mean, Italian, you know, Chardonnay from Northern Italy doesn't taste like Chardonnay from Australia or Chardonnay from Argentina or South Africa. Even, you know, the difference between, say, Chardonnay from Santa Barbara and Chardonnay from, so Santa Barbara in the Central Coast and Mendocino, California in the North, those don't taste the same. So even just subtle growing differences. But for the most part, I mean, Chardonnay is a very, I mean, it travels. You find it planted all over the world, and it's unique to all of those places. It really is. I mean, it's a wine that will, like I said, it's like modeling clay. It'll be whatever somebody wants it to be, or doesn't want it to be. So, yeah, there are many faces of Chard. Absolutely. Was everybody ready to move on to the red?
All right. Yeah, well,
All right. So, so Burgundy is an interesting place. It's very old. It was largely created by the dukes and the church as they were the ones responsible for owning the vineyards. They didn't always plant them, but in Burgundy, Chardonnay typically likes to grow in certain places that are often closer to the city of Dijon. Back in the day, the dukes of in the I want to say 14th century, but I may be off, were they loved Pinot Noir. That was one of their favorites. So they insisted that Pinot Noir be grown and the best Chardonnay. So the best Pinot Noir and the best Chardonnay needed to be grown closer to the city of Dijon. And they decided, really arbitrarily, but it was really, they just wanted to make sure that they had enough vineyard space for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, that they sort of banished, I mean, it was not legal to plant the grape that we're tasting now. And even though, so the larger region of Beaujolais is at the tail end of larger Burgundy. And it is not technically considered part of Burgundy, even though it is in fact part of Burgundy. I mean, you have to, when you're talking about it, you really do have to qualify what you're referring to. I mean, technically, no, Beaujolais is separate, but we all can, I mean, those of us selling wine consider it part of Burgundy. But In the region of Beaujolais, Gamay Noir, which is a very close relative to the red Pinot Noir, that's where Gamay has to be planted. There are some unregulated regions further north where you could plant it, but for the most part, in the region of Burgundy, it's not planted outside of Beaujolais. Within the region of Beaujolais, there are 10 what are called crus, C-R-U, and a cru is basically the property surrounding the vineyards surrounding certain villages, or in some cases monuments. And in this case, the vineyards surround a very famous windmill and in Moulin-à-Vent. But Burgundy soil is very complex, and even within the kind of the lesser regions in Beaujolais, they are very complex, and each village, each cru kind of has its own style. So Moulin-à-Vent is a cru that is the Beaujolais that is produced there is fairly structured, fairly tannic. It's a fairly big wine. There are other crus that are kind of the complete opposite. They are more pretty, elegant, subtle, nuanced. Moulin-à-Vent is not that. This is a fairly full-bodied red, but 100% Gamay Noir. And I mean, on the nose, to me, again, a fall wine. It's suitable for lighter cuisine, but we haven't gotten to braised beef short ribs on mashed potatoes yet, but we're at coq au vin or something just a little bit lighter in style, where the flavor, the fattiness and the richness kind of matches the wine. But on the nose, I mean, you get plum and cherry and black currant, and then I always get kind of a little forest floor. There's like fallen leaves in the background. Little bit of tobacco, a little bit of leather. I mean, there's a lot going on with this wine. I really, unfortunately, Pinot Noir from Burgundy has gotten very expensive. I mean, in some cases, many thousands of dollars for a single bottle. And Gamay Noir is, and Gamay from Beaujolais, from the crus particularly, I think offers a great value. You're getting vineyards that, maybe 60, 75 years old. I mean, you're getting vineyards that have been tended for a very long time. And the know-how, the awareness that the growers in Moulin-à-Vent have for this, what this grape needs, how to coax greatness from this grape. They've been doing this for hundreds of years. They get it. They know how to do it. And so to me, it just smells like the fall. I associate that with the fall. Yeah, cherries, strawberries, black tea, dark fruits. I mean, the tannin, the astringency that you get in the mouth. I mean, it kind of is holding. So what makes this particular wine great with food? I mean, it's got that tannin, that dryness that you're feeling, and the acidity that the grape naturally has provides just the perfect counterpoint to, medium plus to full-bodied foods, foods that have, a decent amount of fat, not abundant. I mean, we're not talking like, what you would want to consume, when it's 20 degrees outside, but it's fall cuisine. It's like the roasted meats, the roasted root vegetables, things that are still, maybe some of the things are still coming out of the garden. The gardens haven't completely shut down. grains and like, wheat berries and things like that do really well with this. Mushrooms love. I will say, I think the mushroom table is over there.
There.
And it's the craziest thing. I mean, it's literally like 100 yards of mushrooms and only like 5 are ones that I've ever seen before. Most of them are locally foraged, in fact. But this wine, I mean, it provides that kind of nice complement to the foods that you would be having in the fall, and what would be happening in your garden, what would be happening, kind of if you were on a farm. Where are you in the process? Where are you in the year, in the annual cycle? This is very reflective of that. And I mean, like I said, as Kathleen said in the beginning, kind of all wines are fall wines because that's when harvest occurs. It doesn't matter whether it's the Northern Hemisphere or the Southern Hemisphere. Their wines are harvested in the fall. But it is, these wines in particular, I mean, they just kind of convey that whole, they're very timely, I guess I would say. But no, I mean, this wine with, roasted bird, fowl, and chicken, quail, turkey, duck, all in that vein. Salmon, it loves things out of the water. Again, where these wines are made, maybe 2-3 hours from the coast. So fresh fish is definitely part of what they are consuming. Some of it freshwater, some of it saltwater. But just very complementary to the foods, and even but even by itself. And I always want to remind people when we're talking about old world wines, the vast majority of old world wines were not really meant to stand by themselves. They have food companions. There's a kind of a rule that is often used particularly in restaurants, things that grow together go together. I mean, that is more true than not. And these wines, they definitely convey that. Any thoughts on them?
Yeah. Any comments?
This one I really like.
Oops. Your microphone is kind of cutting out on us, Steve.
I'm sorry.
No, there you go.
There you go.
There, I gotta lean forward, I guess.
Yeah.
I do enjoy this wine. I think I like this one more than the Chardonnay.
Mhm.
But I don't. And again, I don't have a real sophisticated palate, so I don't pick up all the flavors. But some of them I do. I can taste, especially after he mentions them, right? And they say, "Oh yeah, that's there."
Yeah.
And this I can see having with, for me, a steak or the roast chicken.
Yeah.
Would be good.
Yep.
Done.
No, these wines, I mean, just like roast chicken, it has just enough fat to really complement this. But to your point on the steak, I mean, this has a lot of structure. I mean, I wouldn't say that if somebody loved Pinot Noir with a steak, I wouldn't say they were doing it wrong, but that would not be my first suggestion for a pairing, just because the steak, say it's a ribeye, lots and lots of fat. The wine won't have the power to match those flavors and that fattiness. But this wine has a lot of tannin and a nice blast of acid. So with a steak, I think that you really would this would be one of those wines that I think would stand up very well to a steak.
I really like it with food. I happen to like the Chardonnay better personally, but I think this is great with food. I didn't care for it as much drinking it just to drink it.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously just a simple difference of opinion. It's really a good wine, and it really goes nicely with all those fall cheeses and stuff
Mhm.
that nuts and things that I tried it with. I would serve it like a shot with, all kinds of, I said to Steve when I picked up the wine, I wish I could eat dinner, not hors d'oeuvres when I'm
Mhm.
doing this.
We, you know what, we may have to do something like that.
That'd be
That
fun.
actually
I
would-
like that idea.
If we could send out like, maybe do like a 3-course. And if everybody could be like, we send out recipes
I'm,
and
I'm in.
yeah, we might have to figure out the
Cindy's
the
in.
dinner party.
I went away for a second. I do have a gauger recipe, and I'm going to send
Perfect.
it to Kathleen. She can
Nice.
pass it out.
Yeah.
It came out okay. I had to scan it, so that's why I was going. But yeah, that would be great. But I love this wine with food. It's just terrific. Just my personal thing. I preferred the other to this in terms of just drinking it on the porch, which is what I did yesterday.
Mhm.
But it's still nice. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still very, very nice.
Yeah, no, it is, I mean, again, there are certain things that are maybe traditional about certain wines, certain foods that are traditional about them, but I will always tell people, I mean, within our industry, there are palettes that are fairly, I mean, far more complex than mine, far more complex than most. And there are definitely times where it's like, I just don't get it. I want to get it. I don't get it. So I always tell people, it's wine drinking. It's only a job for some people. And it should be 100% pleasure for anybody who's not doing it for a living. So no, drink what you love. Absolutely.
The earthiness of it, the kind of that kind of taste in this is just dynamic, and that's
Mhm.
something I prefer with food than without.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate how great a wine it is.
Mhm.
I really like that undertaste, and like the acidity of the other one. This has a lot of, I think, tannins and acidity
Mhm.
as well, but a lot of earthiness in it, which to me is the dominant taste.
Well, and earthiness, earthiness really, I will say the wines, I mean, I love, for example, the region of Bordeaux. Young Bordeaux and old Bordeaux are so different. Young Bordeaux is kind of brash and bombastic and in your face, and you drink it because it's like, wow, it's like, it's like like licking a 9-volt battery. And but older Bordeaux, I mean, it most definitely will be earthy. I mean, depending on how old, but it should be, there should be a level of earthiness. And but in the context of like, I mean, not like dirt, but mushrooms are earthy.
Yeah.
And things that contain umami generally are kind of earthy.
Root
And
vegetables.
yeah, root vegetables have a complexity to them. I mean, I during the winter time, I roast vegetables every week. I mean, I live off roasted vegetables. I think that's my way. I mean, I love the harvest season, but the fall, when you have to kind of make do with what you put away during the harvest season, I mean, I think that's great. And the earthiness that, yeah, mushrooms and sweet potatoes, rutabagas, parsnips, I mean, it just goes at celery root. Those need something to kind of help them along. And so if you were to have, roasted root vegetables and roast chicken, I mean, you've just put everything on the plate that this wine wants. And I mean, roasted carrots and roast chicken with some onions and shallots and garlic and herbs. I mean, it's just, this wine is such a great foil for that. It really does. I mean, these kinds of wines. But no, the earthiness, I guess I stopped. There are certain old Bordeaux's that are really funky that, quite honestly, I don't enjoy by themselves the way I guess I wish I did. The wines that, I mean, the old Bordeaux's really do, they need, you know, some amazing food. And I mean, like if I'm drinking a great Bordeaux, I probably am dragging it to, you know, a friend's restaurant or something and paying the corkage just because I need that kind of food to pair it with. So as I said, the old world has fewer standalone wines than the new world. I mean, we don't find a significant amount of so-called earthiness in wines from the United States. I mean, certain parts of Oregon are I mean, they kind of want, I mean, the soil there is crazy complex. It, you know, in the Willamette Valley, they've got soil that was part of a flood millions of years back, and volcanic eruptions. And so it's red and clayey and just amazing stuff. But that, I mean, those vines, certain vines will need certain soils to develop that earthy complexity. And certainly in regions where they've grown the same grape in the same vineyards, they've really kind of been able to dial in. It's like, well, if we like the earthiness, how do we get more of it? And, you know, there are all sorts. I mean, that vineyard management is its own science and art. But no, this wine, I in no way should everybody like it, but it appeals to me for a lot of reasons, particularly at this time of year.
Yeah, when I picked it up from Steve, we were talking about, as he said, the Nouveau Beaujolais versus the Cru, and which is all new to me. That stuff that I'm just learning because we have these Zooms, thank God. But it's kind of like rosé versus rosé. You know, I was out in California when the big craze was the white Zinfandel, and it's like, I mean, there were T-shirts that said, "Friends don't let friends drink white Zinfandel." And I've learned from this and other experiences how wonderful rosé is separate from the sweet rosés.
Mm-hmm.
And I find this Beaujolais the same, this Beaujolais Cru the same difference from Beaujolais Nouveau, which is not one of my favorites. So it's really, I mean, first of all, thank you, Steve. It's been great having these Zooms, but I've learned so much from not generalizing, you know, one wine versus another just from a single type of making of it.
Yes. Oh, yes. Don't, I mean, there are wines that I absolutely love and loathe, and they're the same grape. It's just the winemakers who are making them. They're, and, you know, kind of talking about the first wine, I mean, Chardonnay, as I said, it travels very well. It goes all over the world. Pinot Noir, Gamay Noir, they just don't. They don't have as many places that are as hospitable for them to create greatness as other grapes. In Cabernet, it's another grape. It will do very well in many places. I mean, it will adapt to its surroundings. But these grapes are very temperamental. They like certain specific places in the planet and don't like others. And that really, I mean, I guess that's maybe that's the moral of the story. I mean, if you love wine, you know, and you love certain styles of wine, find out, you know, explore them, find out whether, I mean, if you only, you know, if you only drink Chardonnay from California, try it from Oregon, try it from Washington, try it from the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. There, you know, try it from around the world, because you'll discover that there's so many variations of this. and that's really true for every varietal. I would say Chardonnay is fairly extreme in that respect. But I mean, Cabernet from Napa Valley doesn't really taste like Cabernet from Washington, or Cabernet from Chile, or Cabernet from South Africa. I mean, they're all very much a product of their environment, and they take on individual characteristics of those places. So, I mean, that's one of the beauties of wine. I was talking two things actually that I'll think. I mean, I'll bring up specifically to Beaujolais. I was Beaujolais Nouveau. I was tasting wine the other day with a French importer. We often will see importers come into the markets this time of year. It's kind of, the harvest is done and the wineries can kind of work on stuff in the wineries, but they have time to visit accounts and things. And I was talking with a French importer, and we were talking about Beaujolais Nouveau, and she's like, you know, it's really one of those things. If you are in Paris and it's the second Tuesday of November, by all means, go out, you know, guzzle Beaujolais. That's what you do. It's situational. It's that experience. But you take all of that. I mean, because, you know, Beaujolais Nouveau, I mean, there's all sorts of lore about it. I mean, they have bike races, foot races to bring the wine from Beaujolais to the city centers where it's immediately uncorked and consumed. I mean, it's a something that is really more of an event than a wine appreciation moment. Beaujolais Nouveau is the liquid of that moment, but it's not really about the wine. But she was saying, you know, I love, if I'm ever at home and I'm able to participate in Nouveau parties, I do, because, you know, why not? You always feel terrible the next day because you drink way too much, and you know, the streets turn red. But, you know, but outside of that, she's like, I would much rather, if I remove that context. I mean, I guess maybe the equivalent is, if you're in Jamaica and you're drinking Red Stripe, it's delicious. When you're sitting in an airport after missing your flight and you're drinking Red Stripe, it's not that great. It's really, it's missing everything that Jamaica provides. So I would put Beaujolais Nouveau in that same context, because the difference between Cru Beaujolais, I mean, some of these wines, I mean, Beaujolais Nouveau has about maybe a 3-month window lifespan. I mean, it falls off a cliff almost overnight. Like wines from Moulin à Vent, I mean, those could be a 10-year wine. Those could be a 20-year wine. They do have the chemical structure and the chemical wherewithal to last and to age. And so I would say there's nothing wrong with Nouveau, except for the fact that it should be kind of placed into the context of, it's like you're at Mardi Gras and you get a hurricane at Pat O'Brien's. It's not the greatest cocktail you've ever had in your life. It really isn't. But you're on Bourbon Street and you're at Pato's, so you have a hurricane.
All about the experience.
It is. And 9/10 of that experience is you're on Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
At Pat O'Brien's. So, you know, I would say, you know, it's funny. We've Beaujolais Nouveau used to be, I mean, I've sold wine for 20 some years. It used to be where, you know, stores would have pallets of Nouveau. And I think last year, we sold through the entire season. So we'll get it in November, mid-November. I think between mid-November and the end of December, we sold 1 case. So 12 bottles went out the door.
Wow.
But we sell, you know, Beaujolais from I mean, there's actually also a general style of Beaujolais called Beaujolais Village. And it's sort of like that Bourgogne Blanc. It is not from one specific village or cru. It's sourced from the broader region. Less expensive, but I mean, you know, for $14, $15, you can get a really nice Beaujolais Village. And that may only be a couple dollars more than that Nouveau. And the quality of those wines is stark. The quality difference rather is stark.
Yeah, there's a couple of, I want to get caught up on the chat.
Mhm.
Sorry, I had to pop off for a minute. Kim made the comment that salmon is always hard to pair with because you get kind of a metallic taste with it. And she thinks this wine might be a nice complement for that.
Oh,
pairing.
most definitely. Actually, salmon with Pinot Noir and Gamay Noir, one of the greatest pairings ever. I mean, it really is. Salmon has the Swiss precision, spot on, perfect amount of fat for Pinot and Gamay. Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, like a cedar plank, like a cedar plank cooked salmon, grilled salmon even. I mean, you can even get kind of more, you don't have to poach it or treat it very delicately. You can even add some bigger flavors to it. And these wines will absolutely stand up to it. And you taste, I mean, when a food wine pairing works really well, you generally taste more of both. The salmon tastes better, the wine tastes better. There is a synergy that happens that separately you would not get.
And Shelley had a question about, so the earthiness comes from, and I'm going to mispronounce this word, terroir, T-E-R-R.
Terroir, yeah.
Terroir, okay.
So terroir is a French concept. It essentially means taste of place. And the French have always been concerned about reflecting terroir. It wants to, the wine, I mean, you can drink any beverage that's, you know, I mean, I always say, I love Coca-Cola. It's great. There's nothing, it's not specific to any one place, although it does vary from country to country, but it tastes the same every time. And it is what it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I would argue certain wine, there should be a sense of place captured in it. I mean, that's why you drink it. It's when, you know, again, it's funny with this same French importer that I was talking about the other day. She said, you know, during COVID, it was so great to be able to visit Italy and France and, you know, California and Washington and places all over the world without leaving my house, because I could go and get a bottle of wine and I could be there. I could, I mean, you know, it's not like looking at a picture. That's not, that you're not actually ingesting the picture. So you can actually physically experience a place. And that's kind of the magic of wine. I mean, it should be, you don't need to love it, but a wine, you know, I don't love every wine, even wines that I'm supposed to love. I either do or I don't. And that's, everybody's like that. But I do believe absolutely that if it's not just kind of like, well, it's a Tuesday night and I worked late and I just need a glass of wine with my dinner, then you're really, that's not the issue. But if you're like, you know, I'm going to relax with a glass of wine and I want to experience something, you know, challenge yourself. Like, what am I tasting? What do I like about this? What do I don't like about this? I mean, knowing what you like about a wine is just as important as knowing what you don't like. Because when you come into a store and you tell me, well, I hate this, this, and this, then the odds of you being happy with what you leave the wine store with had just grown. And so, you know, go through, like, every time you taste a wine, I mean, think about what are all the characteristics like, and you don't need to like be, you know, wine nerdy. You just, you know, it's like, well, that had too much, that was too tart. That tasted like a fruit I don't like. That, you know, there are all sorts of things. And those things, you know, create a catalog of all of the things that you like and all the things that you don't. And you will become a better wine drinker. I mean, not a better wine drinker. You will be more, you will enjoy the experience more.
Yeah.
Because you'll be able to eliminate things that you know that that's not really your jam. And even the most open-minded, you know, wine tasters will have preferences. I mean, everybody does. So, but no, terroir is, as I said, it's a concept. It's sort of hard to pinpoint because, there's so many things that go into terroir. I mean, terroir is the soil, and soil is incredibly important for growing grapes. It is for every agricultural crop, but grapes are very specific. You know, they don't want soil that is overly nutritious, because then they just can kind of get lazy. You want to challenge them a little bit. You want to make sure that the drainage is good. But you know, the complexity of the soil, I mean, there's so much diversity in soil, and that matters a lot. So terroir is the soil, it's the aspect, you know, how much sunlight does it get? It's drainage, of course, that kind of leads into the soil part, but you know, there's so many variables that come into play with terroir. But what it generally is considered is, so let's say in 20 years, we taste a whole bunch of wine from Moulin en Vent. If there is terroir, we should be able to identify the common thread that goes through all of them. We should be able to see that there are certain aspects of the wine that follow through, regardless of producer, regardless of vintage in most cases, but that there is something that is captured in that wine that is true year in, year out. And that's terroir. And earthiness is definitely part of it. I mean, that's a component. But there, I would say that terroir can also be, you know, kind of a lack of certain qualities. I mean, the growing climate, the growing conditions don't provide for everything, and that also is terroir. But no, to this specific wine, this wine absolutely has terroir. Absolutely.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you. We've hit our time, but gosh, what a lot of great information, and it's time to start experimenting, right?
Yes, always.
Yeah. And lots of comments about, yeah, let's figure out how to do a dinner with these wines. So
I think that sounds awesome.
it'd be fun to send out recipes or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
There's got to be a way to do it.
No, I think, yeah, maybe like, I don't know, maybe in January, where nobody would want to go, like if it's cold and nobody wants to leave,
Yeah.
just stay in the house and cook some food.
I think it sounds
Yeah.
awesome. That
That
sounds
sounds
perfect.
awesome. Okay, that's on the
Love that.
now before we go, what would people like to do for the next one?
The next one, we're throwing you a curve in our pattern. It's going to be on Wednesday, November 16th. So, and also at 5 o'clock, but it's a Wednesday instead of a Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah. Any particular region we haven't hit that you'd like to learn more about? Or I guess we're getting close to Thanksgiving, so there's maybe some, you know.
Actually, yeah, you want to do turkey wines?
Yeah, if that sounds good.
Yeah. No, we can do turkey wines. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because there's so many out there.
I love turkey wines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like fun.
Only because, like, technically these would be two wines that I would talk about during turkey time, but we'll find some stuff that is not those.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds intriguing. I like that.
All right.
All right. Well, everybody have a great evening. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you hopefully see you before next month, but if not, enjoy the rest of October, and we'll see you November 16th.
Enjoy.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.